Well, hey McFly subscribers. So today we're going to go over how to set up a two-fly system. Of course, before you do this, check your local river where you're going to go fish and make sure you can fish two flies. Some say no. Now, many of you already probably know how to do this. For some of you that are new to fly fishing, especially nymphing, this might help. So again, this is a two-fly nymph rig setup. Tapered leader already on it. I've done demonstrations on how to get leader onto your line and how to actually put line on your reel if your local fly shop can't do it for you. Go back and check those videos out if you're interested. But today we're just setting up a two-fly system. Let's talk about the leader first. So they make multitude different types of leaders. You've got different sizes, so anywhere from 6X up to, I think 0X for tapered leaders. Definitely a tapered leader is important. That's what helps you roll, turn those flies over when you're casting out. They make anywhere from, I think, 7.5 foot, depending on the company, of course, but anywhere from 7.5 foot to 9 foot. Super sensitive fish when you're dry fly fishing. Some people will like to have like a 10 or 11 foot leader. That's up to them. Okay. But the main that you find at fly shops, 7.5 to 9 foot, most fly shops that you go to. So that's usually what you're working with. I like to keep it 9 foot, and the reason why is my rods are 9 foot if I'm fishing a 9 foot rod, and that way I'm not kind of doing that kind of where I'm pulling back on the rod and trying to reach out for the fish with my net. Now, a lot of people will they'll get a 9 foot leader and tie their first fly on. And that's great if I don't feel I need to fish fluorocarbon. If I do fish fluorocarbon though, a lot of times I want to put a little top section of fluorocarbon on there. They do make fluorocarbon leaders, however, they're like $10 each. So for me, I'd rather get a nylon leader and be able to get 2 or 3 of those for the same price. Basically start with that, but I get a shorter one. So you could tie your first fly directly onto the 7.5 foot leader if you wanted, or a 9 foot if you start with 9 foot. However, I like taking a bit of fluorocarbon, so I match it up. This is 5X. This is actually a 5X leader. I just brought this out to show you. This is a 5X leader, and this is 5X. This is actually nylon. It's not fluorocarbon. I didn't want to waste my fluorocarbon. It's expensive, but I'm going to show you guys how to do this with nylon, but do the same thing with your fluorocarbon. So I like adding a tippet of fluorocarbon leader, and I'll pull out a section, maybe 1.5 foot long. Now I've got that section there, and we need to attach onto here. And what this does is it makes this 7.5 foot leader, which that's what this is. It's a 5X, of course, but a 7.5 5X, makes that basically a 9 foot leader. But then you got 1.5 foot of fluorocarbon, and makes it easier for the fish to not see it. You could do a couple different knots. Now I've showed you guys how to do both of these. You could do either a blood knot or a triple surgeons. So the blood knot's going to be a little smaller, a little more inline, and I think holds a little better than the triple surgeons, but both work just fine. I'm going to do a blood knot today. And there we go. So now we've got a little section of fluorocarbon leader. Now just go with the 9 foot if you're not doing fluorocarbon, but if you do want to attach fluorocarbon onto your nylon, this is how you would do it. So as you can see, there's maybe 1.5 foot section, and that would turn this 7.5 foot into a 9 foot leader right there. And then you want to attach on your first fly. Now use, again, when I said that you could use either blood knot or triple surgeons for this knot, do whatever you are comfortable with. Whatever knot you're comfortable with that attaches, but those are the 2 I usually use. There's a couple others that you can use to attach line, tippet to leader. Okay, whatever one works best for you. That's what I do there, okay? And then go ahead and attach your first fly. Usually, in general, this is how I'm fishing. 80% of the time, not always, but 80% of the time I attach my larger, heavier, a lot of times with a bead head, sometimes not, but something a little larger that gets your fly system down so you're not having to use as much lead or no lead. But it's up to you, and it depends on where you're fishing. So this could change. You might want to put 2 small flies, or a small fly at top and then a larger fly. Basically your lead fly might be smaller and your tail fly might be bigger. Okay, it just depends on what you're trying to do and how you're fishing. But most of the time, I'm putting on a larger lead fly. Okay, so this is basically the most common, easiest way to set up for me. Okay, so then I just tie on my lead fly, and I use something called a Duncan loop, but use whatever knot you're comfortable with. Now the reason why I do a Duncan loop is you can see here, now it's created, you might not be able to from back there, but it created a little loop. What that does is allows this fly to move around a little bit more because of that loop there. Obviously you want to trim off your tag end. And there we go, there's the first fly. Another reason why I do a Duncan loop is because I like keeping all my knots the same. I don't want to change out knots for different types of things. So we're going to take, now a lot of times I'll fish to my first fly, if it's a bigger fly, maybe 5x, and then I'll drop down to 6x, or 4x and then drop down to 5x, or whatever it may be. A lot of times I'm fishing a smaller fly behind the bigger one. This will be the attractor. This will allow the fish to come up and take a look at it, and then I've got the smaller fly that they usually end up hitting more often behind it. Then I pull out a smaller section. This will be 6x, for instance, on this one, but you can do any combo that you want. But basically, pull out about a foot section here of 5x, and then I do a Duncan loop, and I'll show you why. So a Duncan loop is basically a slip knot. Now you got this loop, and you just slide it right over the end of your hook and pull tight, and that's on the back end of your fly here, and clip off that. Okay, now that that is on the end of that fly, now you got to decide how long of a distance between each fly you want. I generally start off a little longer because I can always bring this back up without having to add another piece of tippet. So I'll do about maybe 18 inches. If I have too much, I just clip off some. So there we go. And then I attach with that loop, that Duncan loop, my next fly. There we go. As you can see, it creates a little loop and allows that to move around quite a bit. That's how you attach the flies on the two fly setup. Every once in a while when doing a Duncan loop, you can see there's a bit of a squirrely on the line. You might not be able to from there, but pinch the knot that you made. You don't want to do this without pinching the knot very tightly, and then just stroke it with your other finger and make it straighter. You've got a knot up here. You can add your lead. So if you want to add your lead, you can add a little bit of lead up higher or down below. It's up to you where you want it, but generally I like it above the knot, so I've got that extra knot there. I'll add the lead right above that knot, and then you can add your indicator if you're going to fish an indicator. So I've got one of these simple indicators. These are pretty easy to use, simple. It's hard to see here how far away it is, but you can tell I've got maybe 4 feet, 5 feet from that indicator. If you need to move that up and down throughout the day, if you need to fish a deeper pool, you can always just unscrew a little bit, pull that up, and screw down, and it's stuck on there, and that'll be deeper. If you need to go more shallow, you can always bring this down to much closer to the fly. There's a couple different types of indicators. There's these bobber type. This is a airlock, it's called. Then there's the thingamabobbers, which are just like this, except for the type of connection. It's just like a little loop up there that you create a loop in the line. I like these if I'm going to fish a bobber type. There's many different types of indicators if you want to use. So I have shown you guys this type. This is the New Zealand strike indicator, and it's like wool basically, and this is a little more sensitive. These tend to be a little more buoyant, and it's hard to see as many strikes. This is a little more sensitive, so you could use this instead, or you could go non-indicator. You could just basically fish this like a Euro nymphing style if you wanted high sticking in a way. Those are all different techniques. It would be hard for me to show you that on camera. Now, there's a couple ways of attaching a two-fly system. So this is basically attaching onto the tail end of this fly. And there's also other ways to make a 2-fly system. Now I do this one because I think it's the quickest and it's pretty good. The only difference is it might make this first initial fly swim different. It won't wiggle as much because there's something connected to the tail. Some people, they will go again through the eye of the hook and tie it on with whatever knot you want. So now you've got 2 flies on there, basically dropping off the eyelet of that one. However, the reason why I never do this type is because when this is swimming along and there's any kind of tension, you can tell that this is going to end up pulling and making this swim a little funky. It'll kind of swim off to the side and it won't be as natural. I don't like that route. If I am going to do something in that realm, then it's called a dropper loop. There's a couple ways of doing it. So basically, when you tie your blood knot, you could just keep this tag end long like that. You want to trim the shorter tag end, the one that you don't intend to tie off of. And this is how you would do it if you wanted 2 different weight of line, so a 5X and a 6X, right? So now you've got this hanging off the bottom. You want to tie your larger fly on this one, and then your smaller fly on that one. And now you've got a dropper loop because you've got this extra tag end. So basically this fly will be down here, this fly will be up here. That's a really nice way of doing it as well. There is one other way if you want both of those to be the same. So for instance, 6X. Get yourself an extra long piece of tippet. And just for time's sake here, I'm going to do a triple surgeons. So now you've got this extra long piece of 6X if you're going to do fluorocarbon or not. You could do something called a dropper loop. Dropper loop, basically you want to give yourself a little room here, like that. Cross the line. And I've shown how to tie this a little more in depth. And there we go. So now you've got yourself a dropper loop. And those are very strong. Basically, just clip one side. I don't think it matters which one. And now you've got yourself 2 lines coming off. Tie on the 2 bugs that way. So those are the 3 ways of making a 2-fly system. It's very simple, guys, very easy to do. And a lot of places it's really good to try to fish 2 flies because then you can see what they're hitting. Sometimes you want to do 2 different types of flies. Obviously, red annelid and a very large hare's ear, completely different types of flies. You can see what they're willing to hit, if they want to hit bigger or smaller or whatnot. Another thing about that is it's double the ability for a fish to see it and therefore double the hits. One thing to keep in mind though is whenever you're fishing a 2-fly system, no matter which type of way you set this up, you are going to tangle a little more often with the 2-fly system. They're great tools to use, but you will tangle more often. So it requires a little more finesse when casting out there or roll casting, and you got to keep checking these to make sure they're not tangled up. But that's pretty much the overall on how to set up your fly on a 2-fly system. Majority of your fishing is going to be 2-fly system if you're nymphing, as long as your local river allows it. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this sort of thing, please subscribe. I will see you on the next video. Now you go catch some fish.